Stay still!
Hello, police. You've been broken into, right?
Anything you do today may be given in evidence. Do you understand that?
Anyone whose property has been destroyed by fire knows how frightening an accidental blaze can be. But it's quite devastating when the fire is proved to have been started deliberately. 1/4 of all non-domestic fires in this country are started by arsonists. We'll be reporting on that later in the programme. The crime of malicious fire-raising, or arson, could exceed accidental fires in the next 20 years. Fire service figures show that the bigger the blaze, the more likely it is to be a case of arson. Fire investigation officers in Norfolk sift through the ashes of a fire, looking for clues as to how it might have started. A thatched cottage has been gutted. In a matter of minutes, the lives of its occupants have been shattered.
Just after midnight, I woke up being aware of some kind of a noise, and when I properly opened my eyes, there was a sort of red glow in the room, and I went to the window and opened the curtains, and there was just a barrage of sparks and flames coming towards me like a great big sort of wave of flame. So I woke out and said the barn's on fire. The wind was blowing the sparks and the burning thatch in this direction, so we didn't really have too much hope. But anyway, when Ivan shouted up that our roof had caught fire, I grabbed the cat and my handbag and rushed out.
Couldn't believe it. It was the most fearsome sight.
And then, in the drive, the feeling of just watching the house catch fire
I've never felt so helpless in my life, just knowing what was going to happen.
Yes.
And you couldn't do a thing about it except wait.
Yes.
The fire also destroyed the next-door cottage. No obvious cause of the blaze was found, but suspicions point in only one direction.
The police aren't clear, but I'm sure they strongly suspect an arsonist.
The police and the firemen both said that they thought that probably was.
Throughout the region, there is an epidemic of arson, not just in the inner cities, but across rural areas too. And Norfolk is one of the worst affected counties. The number of fires that the Norfolk Fire Service are called out to is going down, but the proportion of them that are deliberately started has increased alarmingly.
Hello, Fire Brigade.
At least 1/4 of all our fire calls are arson related. The difficulty with arson calls is the trend is getting worse from smaller fires, bins and rubbish bins, to the larger fires. Every fire call we get, we respond to as an emergency. You could in actual fact be pulling resources, fire appliances and officers into an area where a fire has been deliberately set, and reducing cover in other areas where people may need our help, and it could be putting lives at risk.
Schools have become a favourite target for arsonists. Deserted most evenings, weekends and holidays, they're especially vulnerable. Nationally, 1 school in 8 can now expect an arson attack in the course of a year. In Norfolk, the worst affected has been Hammond's High School in Swaffham.
Well, sadly, we've gone back now 2 or 3 years. In that period of time, we've had 10 fires. Classrooms, the gymnasium, caretaker's house, caretaker's car, school minibus, and latterly the wood store.
This latest fire happened on December the 2nd last year. The local fire officer was called out soon after midnight.
On inspection, once the fire was out, it became apparent again this was yet another arson job. It appeared that this bottom window had been broken and some sort of flammable substance either put through the window, newspapers, something similar, because bearing in mind the complete contents of the building were wood, paper, paintings and such like the students had done for examination purposes, so there's quite a potential mixture inside to burn.
Luckily, the fire didn't spread to the rest of the school this time. But persistent fire raising has affected the school in other ways.
When the gymnasium had been set on fire a year ago, on the day the GCSE exams began, was horrific. We had to work very quickly to get the school in a position to be able to take 150 tense and stressed students through their GCSE exams. I think it affects a lot of the support staff too, particularly. The caretakers, the cleaners, the people who come into school early in the morning, not knowing exactly what they're going to find when they arrive at 6 o'clock. We had one fire where they were the first to discover it. Does opening the door mean that you're going to be greeted with flames and smoke? It's a difficult and tense situation, and I think there's a high level of stress there. I think there's a lot of anger in the staff room that we're wasting money, that at a time when we've got very little, very limited resources, that we're having to spend money and waste money on restoring rooms and repurchasing equipment.
Faced with soaring insurance costs, Norfolk Education Authority has now installed closed-circuit television around the school perimeter to give 24-hour coverage.
It's a great sadness to us all, and that someone would feel this way about us causes us some distress.
So what sort of people are arsonists, and why do they do it? Statistically, most are young males aged 10 to 18, but some are girls. Mary, not her real name, has admitted to 25 cases of fire raising.
Well, I suppose when, like with any crime, you do it for a reason. And some people find it exciting to do it. It's an adrenaline rush or whatever you call it. You actually enjoy watching it and seeing something getting destroyed or whatever. I don't really know what I was thinking, I think it was the excitement of actually just doing it and let the fire crew come and sort it out.
The majority of this group of people do not suffer with a psychiatric disorder. They are, for all intents and purposes, mentally healthy. There are a small group of people who have an abnormal or a morbid interest in fire setting. They get some sort of sense of excitement out of setting a fire, and the associated excitement of seeing fire engines, etc., come onto the scene. Some people have sexual feelings, sexual arousal associated with fire setting, and this drives them to continue to set fires in order to gain some sense of satisfaction. So it's a broad range of people. There is no single stereotype to fit the concept of a fire setter.
Ready, helpers? 1, 2, 3, go! Come on!
The fire service believes that one way to reverse the arson trend is through education, reaching children while they're still young through regular school visits.
Children playing with fire is on the increase, and their curiosity can get the better of them, unfortunately. Playing with fire is obviously very dangerous, and we need to emphasise that.
Yes, I think that's near tie, that, because you tried to turn his head off there, didn't you? All right, so put on back. Yeah, all right. OK, well done.
The fire brigade wishes to play a role in helping the child who is over-curious. Very often there could be a more deep-rooted cause of fire play, as we call it, with children. There could be some frustration, anger and jealousy, and turns them to using fire to express this.
Go!
Well, we've had some children who've been showing an interest in fires, and we felt it was important for them to learn that they're dangerous and how to cope with them safely. It is at this age, between 6 and 8, that they do show an interest and start looking around.
We just have to satisfy that curiosity and make sure that they're educated and they understand the purpose of the fire brigade, and actually putting out uncontrolled fires is no good hiding this phenomena of fire from them.
1, 2, 3.
Matches, matches, never touch. They can hurt you very much.
OK, it's very important, all right? Matches and lighters are not to be played with, all right? Fire is very fascinating and it is a friend, but out of control, it's very dangerous.
Fire officers spend a lot of time training with their equipment and practicing firefighting techniques. Theirs is a risky job, and they accept that. But too often, the dangers they face need never have happened. Richard Bunning is a retained fire officer at the Wharton station in Norfolk.
Good. And relax.
He was seriously injured in a fire last December, and he's very lucky to be alive.
On the night of the accident, obviously we got the call to RAF Wharton. The flames were going through the roof, and our job was to basically save property. So we took a jet up onto the second-storey roof, and we was fighting the fire from there. And obviously there was a lot of smoke about. I had breathing apparatus on, and basically as I was pulling some more hose onto the roof, I sort of like fell from this roof into the courtyard part. I sort of looked up and saw this wall sort of starting to sort of bulge over me with the smoke coming through the brickwork and that. And I tried to stand up, obviously I couldn't. I thought my time was up then.
The fire had been started deliberately. His injuries were horrific, with both legs shattered and a broken pelvis and arm. But he's made a remarkable recovery and is determined to return to the job he was doing before an arsonist changed his life.
The people who are sort of lighting the fires, I don't think they realise the dangers, what could happen. Obviously, if they knew someone would get injured, you know, I don't think they would do it.
But sometimes arson is more than just children playing with matches or petty vandalism. One of the commonest reasons for arson is revenge. This man is serving 4 years in prison for setting fire to a chalet belonging to his wife's lover.
At the time when I tipped the petrol onto the woodwork, it was just a case that I wanted a revenge of some sort because I'd been so heavily deceived. The only thrill I got was when it first took, because the vengeance had been done. I felt better once I'd actually lit it, because there was no turning back there. I certainly didn't get a buzz or a kick out of it.
Revenge is behind the most extraordinary unsolved arson case in the region. For the past 9 years, the Essex village of Barling has been in the grip of an arsonist, motivated, it seems, by a hatred of change or new development.
The fires began in 1988 when a house that was under construction was blown apart in the middle of the night. That was followed then by a floating yacht club that was moored down the creek. That was set on fire and totally gutted. Then after that there was a barn which was under construction being converted into a house. That was set on fire and totally gutted. And then in 1994 £1 million worth of plant which was being used to construct a road onto a tip. All the plant there was destroyed by fire. All these offences occur in the middle of the night. There have been no witnesses to the actual fires. Much of the evidence is destroyed by the fire itself. And the sort of cooperation that you would normally expect to get from villagers isn't available down here, because there's almost like a conspiracy of silence down here that prevents people from coming forward and telling us what they know. I mean, I've spoken to people who have said to me, I wish I knew who the bomber was because I'd go and buy him a drink. So you have that sort of attitude.
One of the victims has been Malcolm Ginn. He was converting the 16th century barn when, during a weekend that he was away, it was set alight and gutted.
Well, it's effectively made the locality a no-go area. And for my part, I'm afraid that I want revenge for the pain and unhappiness this person has brought upon me.
No one has been charged with this or any other fire in Barling. Police are still waiting for witnesses to come forward. Only 1 in 4 arsonists is caught, one of the lowest detection rates of any crime. Fires take only a moment to start and then usually destroy all the evidence. All the fires shown in this film were arson, and so far no one has been charged for any of them.
We have no more than an assumption. We have no actual information at all, and the police haven't been successful in finding anyone at all. But the feeling must be that it's perhaps some former student.
We accept that whoever, if anybody did do this, they didn't intend to burn our house down.
I didn't intend not to burn our house down either.
But that was the end result. Yes. That was actually what happened in the end. So they may have been careless, or they may have intended just to burn a bit of a barn. But the end result was that our house burnt down and everything in it.
Hypnotic and deadly.